Welcome back guys to a brand new video. Very exciting. In this video I'll be showing you the step-by-step process of how I use Fusion 360 to design some of my projects. In particular, I made a tub rack for a ute quite a while ago and I did a video on it. I'll link it just there on the screen. One of my subscribers reached out to me and asked me if I could slow down the process just a bit so they could follow along, and I've done that in this video. So let's jump on the computer and I'll show you exactly how I do it. First we start by measuring the total length of the tub, which is from the back of the cabin to the tailgate. Remember to include any extra clearances that you may need. Now we need to measure the total height of the tub rack and any inclusions on top of it. Once we've got that measurement, we need to deduct the inclusions and then be left with the total tub rack height. Finally, we need to measure the total inner width. Measure this in 2 spots to make sure that you haven't missed any tapering of the tub. For this vehicle in particular, these are my measurements. Alrighty guys, we've jumped over into Fusion 360. Now the first thing that we're going to do is go up to the top left and click Sketch. We're going to select the plane that we want to work on, and that would be the side plane because we're picturing that we're going to be facing the rear back of the tub rack to get the leg angles as the mouse follows like I am on the screen. Going off the measurements that we've measured before at the 1500 inner width, what I do first is I go up to the line tool and I draw a line that is 1500 millimeters in length, and I press enter. We zoom out a bit and then we just take a look at this line that we've got, and what that does, that indicates the inner width of the tub itself, not the overall width, the inner width, which is relevant to the feet that we're going to create that will slip into this 1500 millimeter inner width. So from this point, what I like to do is I like to set the height, which will be 200. These are just guidance lines for the tub rack itself. Now that we've got the height, we can now tie in the other measurements to get the legs and other dimensions that we wish to have to create the tub rack of your choosing. What I'll be doing in this video is recreating the one that I've created previously in another video and recreating the design that I've used in many other tub racks that I've made in the past. So what I do from this point is I'd like to get another line and make it 90 degrees, and I like to go both ways to set that most upper height, and then we've got our inner width of our tub. So what I did then is I pressed the letter S, which gives me the shortcuts. I hit the line tool and I like to just come up and down there, press escape, and then on the other end, same deal, up and down, just to give me those guidance lines so I know that my legs will be within the constraints of this 1500 millimeter width just there and no higher than the 200 millimeters high just there. The size of steel that I always use to make these tub racks, and I will be using in this demonstration drawing on here, will be the 65 by 35 millimeter RHS, and it's 2 millimeters thick, but that isn't relevant in this drawing because thicknesses don't matter, but the overall width and height of the steel does. Because this is a rear view of the tub rack, what we'll be doing is I'll be drawing a 35 millimeter down measurement from the edge just there. So I start the drawing, and then as it gives me the option, I'll type in 35 to fill out that measurement there, and I'll do the same on the other side. Press S, come down, start drawing, and you can see that the blue's lit up. Type in 35, press enter, and that's giving me a 35 millimeter line both sides just there. From here, what we do is we press the S again, and I like to join those 2 lines together. What this does is gives us the rear view of that RHS box section just there. Because we are viewing this from the rear, what we've got to remember is that at some point along here, we need to return the legs back down to being connected or overlapping slightly at that point just there, because that will simulate the width of your actual body of the car. This is the inner width of the tub, and then your body will extend a little bit further than that. So the size of steel that I use when I make the feet for these tub racks is a 50 by 50 millimeter angle iron, and it is usually 5 millimeters in thickness. Now, unlike the measurements before, the thickness of the steel for this is crucial, and we need to enter that in on this sketch here to be relevant to the overall inner width. What I like to do at this point, now that we've drawn that line there, is I like to zoom in so we can focus on this outer section just here. So what we need to do at this point is press T and trim that section off there so it looks a bit neater. We need to make sure that we don't protrude any further than that line there, because that is the inner width of your tub. To go any further would mean that we are increasing the inner width of this section here, which then at the end would mean that the tub wouldn't fit inside your tub of your ute. So what we need to do now is press S, go to the line tool just there. What we need to do is we need to remember to be above this line in what we draw and not below the line, because if we are below the line, we will then be increasing the total height of the tub rack. Now, if your design is crucial and we come down below, say 10 millimeters, that will then overall put your tub rack 10 millimeters higher, and then also increase the height of whatever you install on that tub rack, say a King's rooftop tent or something like that, and that may be make or break it regarding the clearances in your shed or those sort of things. So come back down here, press S, press the line tool, and what we need to do is we need to come back 5 millimeters from that edge there. Move the line, press 5, press enter. That new dot is now 5 millimeters. We press the S tool again, come up 5 millimeters, because that is the thickness of the angle line that we are using, which is 50 by 50. Press S, line again, and then we're going to come forward 50 millimeters. At this point, we press the S again for shortcut, come down 5 millimeters, click it again, and head on back in to that inner corner. Do the same thing, go up to that corner, come down 50 millimeters, press enter, S, and we draw the line back in towards that line there. So when we zoom in, we will see that the original line here goes to that edge there, which was 1500 millimeters. And what we've done is we've drawn back 5 millimeters and then up 5 millimeters, so that we're not increasing the height or increasing the width. This section here is absolutely crucial that you get it right, because if you don't, all the other angles will not make sense when drawing this tub rack up in Fusion 360. Now let's zoom back out and head over to the center of the tub just here, which should be, when you press the S tool and draw a line from that edge, that should be 750, which is half of the 1500, so that is true to the center. The upper platform of this tub rack will be 1200 millimeters in width, because that suits the King's rooftop tent underside. So to make that 1200 millimeters at the top, we just halve 1200, which is 600, press the S for shortcut, and we go from that center line and we come across 600 millimeters. Do the same for the other side. So there we've got the 600 and 600, which equals 1200. Now we press the T for trim, and we just get rid of those lines just there, because they are irrelevant at this point in time. Now that we've trimmed those top ones off, press the S tool again, come down and connect that line there, press the T button, trim off that end. What this does is it simulates the top bar of the tub rack. So we'll go over to the other side, press S again, hit the line button, we'll come down, and then what we'll do is we'll trim off those other end pieces just there, because they are no longer needed. Now it's starting to make sense now. We've still got the overall height just there of 200 millimeters. When you come down to the bottom right, we click this top line here. We can override the top line and make it a true 1200 millimeters wide just there. And then what we do from here is we can draw down the line from the top of the tub here down to the very edge of that angle line down there. After we've done that, what we also do is we come to this line just here, we click it, and we make sure that we are 90 degrees to the line, which is shown by a square that pops up, and the 90 degrees that is shown also next to it. Because we know that the width of this RHS steel is 35, I just type in 35, and I've got that width just there as if it was running that way. We press the S tool, click it on there, and we go beyond. I find it easier to go beyond because it'll square up in the corner, and what we're looking for is the square that pops up there, and as you can see, it is popped up. I like to go from that end, go past everything just to make sure that we are on the line. And then what we do is we trim off the excess. We trim off the bit in there and we trim it off in there. And we can trim off that as well, and also that section there. Once we've done that, you can see how it's all starting to make sense. When we see this line here, we need to draw the line to there, and this is how we get those miter cuts that will be transferable over to your bandsaw, angle grinder, or whatever you choose to use to cut those miter cuts. What we'll do now is we'll zoom in a bit so we can see it a bit closer, and we'll press the S tool, go into that corner there, make sure it locks in, which it doesn't seem to be doing. I'm not sure why. We'll zoom in a bit more. That's locked in just there. Hold down Command, roll your mouse out, and then we'll draw that up into that corner there. Press the trim tool again, which is T, get rid of that line, which is irrelevant, and get rid of these lines just here. They are no longer used. Press Escape, zoom back out, and what you have got is those miter cuts just there. So if we were to draw a line from that corner up at 90, and then if we were to come back down to that and then draw again across here, and then again from the top, it should be a symmetrical rectangle just there with the cross section. So when we go up to the top and we grab the inspect tool, we can compare the degree measurements just there between that and that angle, and we can come over here and we can see that it is 67.5 degrees. We can click back out, hit the inspect tool again, hit that, and then that one there, and we go down and we can see that it's exactly the same again at 67.5 degrees. Now that measurement down there is the measurement that you will put into your saw and cut those miter cuts out to then bring them together to end up at the bottom where you need to be symmetrically on both sides. Let's just quickly delete these sections off just here by pressing T for trim, get rid of that one there, that line there, just to clean it up. So what I'll do at this point is I'll fill in the other side just quickly, and then I'll show you how to extrude it into three-dimensional, so then you can visually see what it will look like in person. All right, we've got that drawn in now. One last thing to do would be to use the sketch tool by pressing S, and we will check the width of those feet that we've drawn just there. Make sure that when we come across, we are at that 1500 millimeters in total length that we can see. Hit that line, make sure down there it's 1500 millimeters. And when we zoom in over to this corner here, we can see that that angle iron piece that we've drawn earlier is on the inside of that line, which means that it'll fit your tub. And then we zoom back out and head back over to the other side, zoom back in, and we select that, and then we can see that we are on the inside. So nothing further than the 1500 millimeter measurement just there. And it's the same that goes for that 200 millimeter line that comes from this line to that line, which is 200 mil. We have made sure that we are above it. So when it sits on the tub itself, we are sitting on this line here, and it will continue to be overall 200 millimeters high. So at this point, we'll just get rid of the line there and this line here, and we'll finish the sketch. Now what we're left with is this object here, which is a side-facing object. I will select, I'll zoom in slightly there, hold down Control, select that one there, and then we'll hold down Control, we'll zoom out, we'll scroll across, we'll zoom in so we can select that one over there, hold down Control as well, and we've got all those selected. And what I like to do is I'll go up to Extrude, and then what this is going to do is going to move that section there sideways, the thickness that you set in this extrude section here, because we drew this on the side facing plane. I will select 65 millimeters, press enter. We've got ourselves a three-dimensional object just there. So what we'll do here is we will select the whole unit just there, press the letter M for move, click the copy button down the bottom just there, and we'll make sure that we grab the arrow just there so that we don't increase the height anymore. I'm going to move this along so that the overall upper width will be the 1170 that I need it to be, but we need to deduct the top width of that, which is 65, which needs to be 1105 millimeters just there. Press enter. We can double check that there by clicking the measurement button, or inspect button I should say, up there, and then this just here. And then the overall width is 1170. You can make that whatever you want it to be, but for this tub rack, 1170 is perfect. Once we've got that, we can close that section on the side there, and then in three-dimensional space, we have basically got our tub rack. We'll zoom out a little bit. This will be what it looks like on the back of your vehicle. From this, we can then press escape to get out of that orbit tool. And what we can then do is we can draw the rest of the rails in. So what I'll do is I'll hit this sketch tool again. And what we do from this point is we just select the plane that we want, but I'll select the face that I want to draw on and then extrude to. So we click this face here. And then what we do is we can swing around, and that's the face that we're drawing on. So what we can do is we can draw lines on that face there, and then know that that was 1200. And then what we want is we want it to be halfway at 600. Hover over that. We come down at 90, which is 35. And then we've got our halfway point. And the division of these side rails that will run across here are entirely up to you. I like to make them symmetrical in some fashion. So what we'll do is we'll then halve this section here again, which was 600. We'll make it 300. Do the same thing over here again. Go to that section, come back, and we'll lock it in at 300. And then what we can do is we can draw our lines from that 300 mil mark and make things symmetrical. Because we are dealing with the side face, we click the dot, and then we come across half of 65 millimeters, which is 32.5. Type that in, 32.5. Press enter. And then from that mark, we will then click it and then go back to being 65. We'll do the same thing over this side. Hit the S button, hit the line. We'll come across 32.5. Press enter. And then we'll do the same thing again. We'll go from that way to that direction and we'll make it 65. What that's done is basically given us the upper width of the bar that we're going to create. So we'll go to the sketch tool and we'll know that the first box that it locks into will be the edge of the 65 millimeters. We do the same thing. We go from there, come across, we come from there down 35 millimeters, and then we head back and it all equals 65. We do the same thing on the other side. You can see the measurements up here. Click that section there, come across 65, click it again, come down 35, click it again. We're going to go 65. And then press the S tool again, and we go up from there, 35. If we didn't have the bodies on there, you would then see what we are drawing. You can turn them on and off just there, but for demonstration purposes, we leave the body on there so that we make sure that we can still see where we are drawing these lines and that they are still correct to the dimensions that we are drawing this body. From here, what I like to do is just finish the sketch. And what we need to do from that point is we need to hold down Command or Control, select them both, and we are going to extrude them. And because we drew them on the side plane, we are extruding them horizontally. So you can grab that arrow there and you can see how that pulls across. What we can do at this point is you can hit the orbit tool just to give you some perspective of where you are going to make sure that you do meet the section that needs to be met on the other side. What we do is we press escape and then we continue these to move them over. And when they go from being red to back to gray, that means that we haven't over extruded them. When you extrude into the other body, you can see that we're creating a negative extrusion into that body. So we want to make sure that we don't go any further than that. 1040 really is 2 times 65 plus 1040, which would give you the overall width of 1170. Once we're happy with that, we press enter, and just like that, we have ourselves a tub rack. It's very simple, very easy to do. Once you know all the things to click on this program, I use this so much, and it's so helpful to avoid wasting materials, and it also helps you to know what sort of cuts need to be made to be able to order your materials from the metal store and get it delivered to your house if need be. It just stops a lot of human error, so to speak. What we can do from this point is we can measure those lengths by hitting the inspect tool, and when you hover over them, you can click them, and then you can come down to the bottom corner and you can see the total length of those sections there. So what we know is we need 2 times this one to create the 2 lengths. So it is 1040 in length. We can come up to here under the inspect tool and we can measure that upper. We know that it is 1200 wide and we need 2 of. So 2 times 12, 2 times 1040, you get the gist. You can add it all up and you can work out your lengths. Now these usually come in, I think, 8 meter lengths. So then this gives you the opportunity to divide it up and work out exactly how much you need. You can come over to this section here, press escape so we're not comparing the measurements, go to inspect, hit the line. We know what our legs are in length, 275.772 millimeters in length, and that is the longest part of that steel section you'll need for the leg. And then once you cut back at that angle that we measured earlier, you will then have the perfect cut to then lay this down and piece it together on the table like I have in a previous video that I created making this exact tub rack. Let's zoom back out and have a look at that one more time. Press the home button, press the orbit button, and you get to see what that looks like in a 3D object. Looks pretty cool. It didn't take us very long to do. I would say that probably only took me 10 minutes to draw up once I knew all the measurements that were required. So I really hope you found this helpful in some way, and a big shout out to my subscriber that messaged me asking me for a descriptive video on how to do this. I hope it's helped you in some way. Please remember to leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, do all those good things, and until next time, I'll see you in the next one.